Same here. I see it's been an important and a busy day for you today.
It is. I think we're busy only on 3 days every year, at least most busy or as busy as we'd like to be. March 8th, Women's Day, 28th May, Menstrual Hygiene Day, and June 5th, which is World Environment Day.
Okay. But I hope we are constantly busy at some point and we forever spread this word about sustainable menstruation and the right messaging about menstruation. I think such days help us with such conversation, and it's very, very important. And I feel today's conversation is very important, as I was telling the audience before this, that sometimes we're so conditioned with so many things that we kind of forget to question so many of these things. So let us start straight. So I've been noticing that almost a decade, uh, most of the news items that we see, it says about 12% of women in India have access to menstrual products. And usually when they say menstrual products, they just say sanitary pads. It doesn't seem right for somebody, this whole statistic. So tell me more about this.
Okay. Actually, we recently did a toolkit on how to report and talk right about menstruation. It was called the Periods and Patrakas Toolkit. And the very first point we addressed in it was this, about the credibility of data we use. This statistic that you're quoting is from a Nielsen report which came out about in 2012, around 2012. And Boon, then a couple of other menstrual health organizations that I know in India have been trying to get our hands on this report, but unfortunately this report doesn't exist. This report is by Nielsen, and it doesn't exist. And the most recent stats that we have, which are more credible, is the NHFS report, I think in 2016, which is the National Health and Family Survey report, and that says over 60% menstruators in urban India and over 55% menstruators in rural India have access to sanitary products. And that's where we're standing at, I mean, at least as of 3-4 years ago. So yes, credibility of data is super important, and it's interesting that you brought that up, because often in the international space platform, but in particular, I think India is portrayed as a period poor country. Definitely, we do need a lot more health infrastructure, a lot more access to hygienic products and more affordable products and a better supply system, etc. But it wouldn't be right to say that only 12% menstruating people in India have access to products.
Yes. And that said, while we are talking about products, and as you also said, India is always seen as the so-called backward place when it comes to menstruation, or people who are experiencing menstruation and the lack of available products. But when they always say products, when they never say products, they always say pads. And invariably, in most people's head, it's about disposable pads and nothing else. And that itself, I feel there is something wrong when there are so many options that menstruators can use when it comes to menstruation. Why is that not being highlighted? And again, for me personally, I feel that disposable pads are actually not sustainable, not just in the environmental sense, but also if you're talking about a community that can't afford even their daily meal, definitely buying a disposable pad is also not sustainable. So why are these things not highlighted, and what is your opinion about these things?
Well, I mean, I can think of so many responses, but the first thing, or at least what I feel is fundamentally required to discuss, is the kind of approach we have to choice in India. It is non-feminist, it lacks consent, it is mostly saying, here's what I think is good for you, which is why you should do this. So the kind of advertising and communication we see in the country, and not just at, like at brands and private space, but sometimes even in the public spaces, which includes governmental or quasi-governmental organizations as well, it's always been product-centric. It's never user-centric. It's never menstruator-centric. Is it about, hey, what's happening to your body? What kind of product do you need? What can I give you? What can I offer you? And here are X number of products. And please pick what is best for you. And I'll see how I can make it accessible, affordable to you. It's always, here's what I think is best for you, which is sanitary napkin. And mostly because it is produced at a global scale and can be offered at X amount of price. And if I can buy X amount in a large, if I give a large order, then I'm probably benefiting from it as well, right? So there are so many folds to it, but a lot of it I feel is because of the kind of attitude we have towards social development at large. Is it's not user centric.
And I feel it's also kind of divided with what the environment needs as well. Because if one section is saying this is what people need, they don't think about what the environment needs. So if there is a community talking about the banning of plastic, it's forgotten that some of these disposable items are also plastic, and why it's that not being talked about. Or again, there was this other conversation about there are so many rules about what kind of what is certified as organic or what we eat, or one must mention the kind of ingredients that go into what we eat. Why is that there is no conversation about what goes into regular sanitary pad? Why is that not being addressed? I think that is also important because people need to have that information of what is touching their body and what affects their health and their environment.
Yeah, it's only as late as 2014 that a feminist organization in the U.S. called Women's Voices of Earth sent napkins of samples of sanitary napkins of a brand called Always, which is by Procter and Gamble, more popularly called known as Whisper in India. They sent a sample of that to a laboratory, and the results were shocking. I mean, 90% of that or close to it is plastic, and strangely nobody else spoke about it before. Even now I don't think it is very common knowledge, and not a lot of news organizations might write about it because Procter and Gamble would give them a lot of advertising revenue, I'm assuming. I hope someday the narrative can go to that extent that even larger brands are thinking about sustainability and offering reusable period products as well. But of course, it's going to take a hit on their revenues, because once you switch to a reusable product, it's not possible to make similar kinds of revenues, because people are not going to come and keep buying things from the same manufacturer or the producer over and over. And I think you and I, as people who work in the sustainability space, know this better than most people, that it's not like regular FMCG goods. So yeah, it's a long way to go, but hopefully someday we'll get there.
Yeah, and that's the hope, and that's why I think such synergies between organizations and social enterprises like us can probably help us beat the bullies of the big corporates. So let's hope for the best.
Actually, while I was thinking, while you were speaking, I was also thinking that one of the reasons maybe why we don't talk about products per se, or is because there is lack of critical reportage in menstruation and also in research in India. Like if you look at the kind of reports that come out, it is always about sanitary napkins or very little bit about politics of menstruation and what's happening around that. But we don't talk about menstrual health disorders at large. We don't talk about PMDD or endometriosis, which is one of the top 5 most painful conditions in the world. And we look at menstruation purely as, rather we sideline it as a women's issue, whereas it is more of a gender issue, a health issue, a human rights issue at large. But we don't focus on those things. And that's what I think we mean when we say that we should be discussing menstruation, right? Because it's not just about products. It's so much more. It's health, it's politics, it's environment, it's accessibility, affordability, informed consent, and so much more, yeah.
And that said, inclusivity as well, because you and I are using the term menstruators, but that's not the usual term. That's not the kind of headlines that we usually see. Or even in schools or other organizations where they feel they are educating the girls in the school on menstruation, they kind of just choose the girls and sideline the boys. So it's not truly inclusive, even in the way it's being reported. what has been your understanding about this and why it's important?
I think inclusivity is at multiple levels, but the most prominent would be inclusivity of different genders. It is important for us to remember that not all who menstruate are women. And also not all women menstruate. By that we mean that there are trans men and non-binary people who are born with uteruses and vaginas who menstruate, but their identity is that of a non-binary person, of that of a agender person, or a trans man, or any of the other several genders that exist. So it is important to say people who menstruate and or menstruators instead of saying just women. And also menstruation cannot be always linked to women or womanhood, because not all women menstruate. There are so many trans women who don't menstruate, and there could be people with uteruses also who identify as women who don't menstruate for x number of medical reasons. So it's important to use the term menstruators to be more inclusive and include people of all genders who menstruate, instead of just calling it girls and women. I think one would be that. And the second thing would be, when we're talking about menstrual experiences or stigma or taboo, usually what we talk about is the rural-urban divide, and we don't go beyond it. We're not looking at intersectionality in terms of Dalit, Bahujan, Adivasi communities or people with disabilities. When they menstruate, what is the kind of experience that they have? Or trans men, what are their experiences like of menstruation? A lot of trans people feel a lot of dysphoria around menstruation, which is a essential function of their body, but at the same time, it causes dysphoria because it is so closely linked with another gender and not their own. So when we say here's a menstrual product for all menstruators, if I'm a trans man, I'm okay accessing it because I'm a menstruator. But when I read the term feminine hygiene product and I do not associate with the word feminine, it causes trauma in me, because then here I don't know, I am a menstruator, I'm not a woman, then is this product for me? Also, is this bodily process even mine? And sometimes as a young person who's still figuring out gender and identity, it can be very, very traumatizing, which is why it is important to focus on the language as well.
I'm glad we are having this conversation. And to quickly wrap it up, I know Boon has put out this toolkit to help us kind of understand this better. What we are having now is just a little peek into the whole issue. There's a lot more to it, and we can't cover everything here. But if you could just summarize everything. So as a responsible citizen, if we were to have this conversation with, say, a group of friends, or if we are running an institution, or if we are talking about it in social media, could you just kind of wrap things up for a layperson and say, what are the things that we need to be conscious about?
So we have a very small checklist that some people can check into. That people can check or look into. But primarily, 4 things to keep in mind is credibility of data or any kind of quote that we're doing. Second would be inclusivity, could be through lived experience of scientific research of trans people across the spectrum, or even people with disabilities, people with different kinds of bodies, different social, economical and social and economical strata of the community. So inclusivity. Third one would be analytical or a critical approach. When we're talking about menstruation, are we only looking at it through the lens of our own lived experience through this geography, or are we talking about it at a global level? Is there enough research to back something? And if there's a lot of research, then do all our experiences fit in? Because lived experience also are a significant chunk of that. So are we talking about that as well? And the fourth one, I think probably the most important also in some way, is a user-centric approach where we go beyond products and look at it as as a rights issue, a human rights, gender, and health issue, and look at it from the lens of all of those 4 things. So yeah, in short, these could be 4 things that one could use to, or rather be cognizant of when they're talking about menstruation. But for the entire list, definitely check out the toolkit.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sonal. I think this has been enlightening for me in many ways. I mean, we all think we know it all, or we've been in this space for a long time, but there's always something new that one learns. And I've gone through the toolkit, and it has been quite an eye opener. So I would recommend whoever's watching this to have a look at that and many of the other resources that Boon has on the website. And yes, so if you are still struggling, if any of you are still struggling to understand what kind of menstrual product that you want to use or want to shift into, there are many platforms like Boon or even Goli Soda. There are other organizations. We would love to help you and talk you through the various options that are available, and you can always try them out. Because as I was telling the viewers themselves, that I was one of those who was also taken, like kind of brainwashed with all these advertising initially. And when they said cloth, I was like, ooh, how can one use cloth? It's so unhygienic. And then I'm I'm okay for the last 10 years, and I've been practicing sustainable menstruation for so long. And there's much more to it than just about the choices that we make. It's about what we talk about as well. So thank you, Sonal, and hope to catch up with you very soon.
Yeah, and while that happens, and we have followers from Goli Soda here, I just want to say one of the things that I love about Goli Soda, a small brand, is that they really use all the products that they put up on the site. So Shruti here has used the Boon menstrual cup and cloth pads, and yeah, and not just those, any kind of soaps and other products that they put up. So I think there is more credibility and authenticity to it. And we're all trying to be more inclusive and open to learning, which is why I like it that Goli Soda and Boond are working together because our values are aligned.
Thank you so much. And I keep telling people I'm always the first user at Goli Soda. I'm the first customer. So I'm so glad. And I was telling our viewers as well, your new cloth pads are amazing. They're extremely comfortable. So one more choice that you've given to our audience besides the cup. So we're looking forward to having them on board, and people can check them out on your site as well. So thank you
Likewise.
so
Thank
much.
you, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye.